near the end of this letter, let us begin this session with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Welcome to all of you once again. Welcome, Shikharji. I now request you to start the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Vibha. Good evening to all the sisters and brothers. And in this, the fourth and the last part of this letter number 68, in which we have been studying about the post-mortem states and some queries about the Devachan especially. So what Mr. Sennett has asked, and in those communications, a lot more has come out, like the times, how much time people spend, different kinds of people spend in different states or planes of consciousness that we study. And these times can vary from few minutes to hours, to days, to years, and to even hundreds of years, even millenniums, depending on the state of the person. And all of this comes down to understanding of the constitution of a human being. I mean, there is no room left for blind belief or any superstition that if after the death of a person, certain ceremony is done, or just by paying the money to somebody and going to some place or doing this and that, will make any change in the post-mortem journey of the individual, then those beliefs also needs to be questioned, that how far they are necessary. And all these things will come in the last part today that we are going to study. And so let us move on. Till now, we have studied about majority of the parts, what happens after death. And in the last, where we left last time, we discussed all the situation, but some exceptions that the master was talking about, that there are a variety of individuals after death who are there in either astral plane or Rupa-loka, lower mental or higher mental plane. But then he says there are some better sort of reliquary, means better sort of people left behind, and the shells. Shells, we'll remember from now on, the shells means where the higher principles, higher duality has won, and then they go to gestation state, and then to Devachan, and these shells, that is the remaining astral body and lower mental body also, it remains lying here for some time and it disintegrates over a period of time. So there is no more any higher manas or in that remaining. It's just a shell. But there are shades. Shades means in which the connection with the higher principles have broken and the lower duality has won, and they have a personality of their own with a lots of negative vibrations. So Master is saying here that not all these leftovers, shells, or the earth walkers, as they are called, are not necessarily all bad. But even those who are good, for the time being, they are made bad by coming in touch with the mediums, because the shells have nothing to lose. They are just going here and there with minimum of mind principle remaining, and over a period of time it will disintegrate. But there is another kind of spirits, so to say, or the people who have died, which are the cases of suicides and those killed by accidents. And they are kind of an exception to the rule, because they have to remain within the attraction of the earth, that is in the Kamaloka or the astral plane, till the very moment, last moment, what would have been their natural time of death. It does not mean that, of course, suicide can never be in the divine plan, as far as I understand. As per the divine plan, I may get some challenging times, suffering, which is as per my karma, but choosing to end this life is again a much worse karma that I am doing. But accidents sometimes may be in part of the as per the karma of the person, but sometimes it's also possible that due to unavoidable circumstances it happens, but then later the compensation is given by the nature. So these two cases of death, because what happens is they basically leave the body in the full quantity of their desires and ambitions and everything. So it is kind of a sin and cruelty to revive their memory and intensify their suffering, as Master says, by giving them a chance of living an artificial life. So how artificial life? Because the desires and ambitions, sensory to have more sensory experience is still there. And the mediums and the sensitives basically are the open invitation to whom they get attracted, and through them they like to fulfill their desires, and thus living an artificial kind of life. That's what he explains. But this leads to overloading of their karma. How overloading of their karma? Because till now they had done some, lived as per their karmic consequences. So okay, still worse situation like this. But now when they are coming in contact with the sensitive or the medium, they are actually using that medium or sensitive person to fulfill their own desire. So the medium or the sensitive person will be doing a lot of things which normally he wouldn't or she wouldn't do. So in this case, when that person does something, it is partly his karma also, but since a lot of influence is due to this person, this spirit, so-called spirit, who is there influencing the person, a lot of karmic burden goes to this individual who has just committed suicide or passed in an accident and invited by the medium or the sensitive. So why this happens, he explains that the people who do suicide think that they will escape all this suffering, but actually they still find themselves completely alive. And not only that, the suffering is even much more, many-fold more, because earlier at least they were in the physical body. So the emotional suffering was in astral plane coming down to brain, and they are feeling that. So it was not that, the intensity was not so much, but now they are in astral body and having that intensity, the intensity will be much more, the experience of it. So then they add to it by doing new karma, influencing the medium or sensitive person. And the another person, and the person who has lost by the rash act their 7th and 6th principles, means the person has committed suicide through the 6th, there becomes an abyss, which is difficult to cross, because that cannot happen until the normal duration of life is done, and then there is a possibility. But during this time which he or she is living, he, instead of repentance, instead of taking, what we call paschatap, or feeling guilt and feeling sorry for what he has done, they are actually try to hold upon the life through various bodies by sinful means. And by doing so, what happens is, once this time is over, at the expiration of the natural term, they generally lose their monad forever. So there was a chance to get connected to our Atma Buddhi after this time is done. But since these people are attracted by the mediums or the sensitives, they basically end up completely disconnecting, as the case that we discussed earlier, that page in the series of lives is completely removed from the memory of the monad. And those who are the victims of the accident, they sometimes the consequences for them are still worse, unless they are very good and pure people. They immediately go into an akashic samadhi, basically in a state of bliss, where they fall into a quiet sleep full of dreams and no recollection of accident, and they will be among their family, friends, and scenes until their natural life term is finished. And when they find themselves born in the Devacha. So, but if they were not good and pure, then he says a gloomy fate is theirs, because they are cut off in the full flush of earthly passions which bind them to familiar scenes. They are still attached to the material life a lot, and then they are tempted by the opportunities which mediums afford to gratify them vicariously, means through them. So if the person was very good, he was immediately going to a sleep after the accident. But if not, then this is the possibility, and these are the names given to sometimes Pishachas, Incubi or Succubi of the medieval times, which influence the humans, and these are called the demons of thirst, gluttony, lust, and avarice, elementaries of intensified craft, wickedness, and cruelty. The main thing is they provoke their victims to horrid crimes and reveling in their commission. This is a very important thing to observe. We think that, no, because sometimes people think, nothing of this sort happens. But if we look around, even in present times, sometimes the nature of the crime is such that we think that, how can a human do that? And it just seems impossible that somebody can even think of doing that. But when such things happen, there is a possibility of these kind of situations, that person is actually influenced by these invisible influences, and because they influence them and they revel in their commission, they feel satisfied, these invisible things. And they not only ruin their victims, the person who is alive, who is influenced, is doing this, not only his life and his karma basically is ruined, but these psychic vampires, because they grasp, they suck the energy out of these people, they continue doing so, and at the end of the natural period of life, they are carried out of Earth's aura into regions where for ages they endure exquisite suffering and end with the entire destruction. This is what he's talking about now, the eighth sphere, or the planet of death, or Mara, the plane between Mara, between astral and Rupaloka, lower mental, or Avicii, sometimes it is called, but there are different names given to states for these. But these are the two extremes that we just studied, that one going into Akashic Samadhi and one immediately trying to get hold of somebody. But what if the victim of accident or violence be neither very good nor very bad? An average person, which is the, I think, majority of humanity, then what happens? Since that victim of accident is not going to sleep, so he is roaming around in the astral plane. It may get attracted. A medium who attracts him will create for him the most undesirable of things, because average person is not having so many of extreme desires of ambition. So, but is still getting attracted to a medium. What will happen? It will kind of influence the person and get influenced in return, because now the karma will be very complex. Now the karma done is being done by both of them together. So what will happen is a new combination of skandhas, and the new and evil karma will be the fate of this person who has died in accident. And what he means karma in this case, he says to explain, and in this continuation, Mahatma tells about the theory, the doctrine of karma and nirvana, and he tells AP Senate to study these two doctrines as profoundly as you can. Because he says, unless you are thoroughly well acquainted with the two tenets, you will always find yourself at sea, I mean, in doubt or confusion in trying to understand the rest. And then he says, we have several sorts of karma and nirvana in their various applications. Basically, the levels of the universe, the world, devas, buddhas, bodhisattvas, men and animals. So there are different applications. Just like there is death of an individual, there is a death of planet also. There is a death of a cosmos also. And similarly, nirvana also. So karma and nirvana are but two of the 7 great mysteries of the Buddhist metaphysics, but only 4 of the 7 are known to the best Orientalists. That's what he's saying. So what is karma? Now he's trying to explain basically the skandhas, what happens, what these skandhas are, and how do they get modified when after death that astral person in astral body get attracted to the medium. So he is explaining that if you ask a learned Buddhist priest what is karma, he will simply say that karma is the same what Christian may call providence in some sense, or a Muslim will call it kismat or fate or destiny. That it is that cardinal tenet which teaches that basically karma and reincarnation, both he's telling, that as soon as any conscious or sentient being, whether man, deva or animal dies, a new being is produced and he or it reappears in another birth on the same or another planet under conditions of his or its own antecedent making. The last part is very important, which relates to karma. The other is kind of reincarnation, but not necessarily reincarnation again back in physical body. Basically, death on one plane of existence is birth on another plane of existence. So it's very relative. There is nothing absolute death or nothing absolute birth. When a person is dying in physical plane, basically is getting born or becoming active or conscious in astral plane, similarly from astral to lower mental. But the conditions related to this rebirth depends, what he says, is its own antecedent making. That is, in other words, the karma is the guiding power. How the next birth, whether in this plane, next plane, or another plane, is going to be, karma is the guiding power, and trishna, which is in Pali called tanha, which is the thirst or desire to sentiently live, to live in this form, which is the force or energy, the resultant of human action, which out of the old skandhas produces the new group that form the new being and control the nature of birth itself. What are skandhas? We'll just have, I'm waiting when he comes actually naturally in the next part, so I'm not going in detail. Let us stay with the word skandhas as of now. What he's saying, the desire ultimately is that energy, the whole resultant of, because all our action is based on desire, which out of the old skandhas, out of the old attributes, so basically out of our old, our accumulated tendencies or attributes, it produces a new group, which and also not only which forms the new being, and also the control the nature of birth itself. That's why it is said at the point of death, when the whole picture is going on in front of the Jivatma, the main scene or the main memory actually decides the next birth. So it is recommended not to cry, not to shout, or do all those things while the person is on deathbed. So to make it even still clearer, he says, the new being is rewarded or punished for the meritorious acts and misdeeds of the old one. Now here comes a paradox, which he'll explain later, that the new being, the new being, basically the effect and the cause of it is the old being. So whether the new being is punished or rewarded is basically, the reason for that is the old one. And karma basically represents an entry book in which all the acts of human being, good, bad, or indifferent, are very carefully recorded in the debit and credit account by himself, so to say, or rather by these very actions. A very symbolical and allegorical thing we find in different religions, that there are recording angels or Chitragupta, who keeps recording, all the actions of the person. But basically here it is saying that just by having those thoughts, desires, then doing those actions, they are automatically basically getting recorded in Akashic records. So that will decide our next step. Okay, he comes into that in Christian poetical fiction, it says that there are recording guardian angels, but in the Buddhistic logic, that every cause should have its own effect, shows its real presence. And those who are opponents of Buddhism, those who oppose Buddhism, give this logic that it is very unjust, that how the doer should escape and the innocent victim to be made to suffer, because the new being is suffering, okay, also rewarded in some parts, due to something what the old being did. And they think, since the doer and the sufferer are different beings. But the fact, he explains, in one sense, while they may be so considered that they are different, yet in another way they are identical. If I step on the ladder, I think in Eastern philosophy, since we are all here, it is we take it for granted because I think it is very easy for our brain structure to understand it. But imagine something who has never ever heard, or a person who is very materialistic in approach, it may be very difficult to understand that how, or until unless they study the constitution of personality, individuality, and the lower quaternary, higher triad, how it works. Very difficult to understand that a new person, new jiva is being punished for no reason, for something that, the previous individual did. So the master says the old being is the sole parent, father and mother both, of the new being. And it is former, that is the previous old being, who is the creator and fashioner of the later, more so in plain truth than any father in flesh. And once that you have well mastered the meaning of skandhas, you will see what I mean. Because if I am walking, going up on the ladder, suppose I step on the first step, that's me. And I step on the second step. So is the person on the second step different from the person on the first step? Yes. If we see in time, they are two different beings because some duration of time has passed. But since it happens very quickly, our mind is able to relate that they are same people. It's just like seeing a video. Actually, it's not a video, but actually the images are moving so fast at a particular speed that our physical eyes are getting having the illusion of a movie or a video that it's moving, because our frequency is not at that level that we can, the images are moving so fast that we think it as a movie. Similarly, in this case on birth and rebirth, since the gap is so much, we not, for a person who is not well acquainted with these doctrines, will normally think that no, these are two different beings until you understand their study. So what now he says, it is the group of skandhas that form and constitute the physical and mental individuality that we call a human being. This group in the exoteric teaching, he says, consists of 5 skandhas. Skandhas basically a group of attributes, and basically in very simple layman language, if we say, it is a totality of our nature or personality. The habits that we have, the thinking process that we have, the sensations that we have, all of them stored, and as you know, we have accumulated a certain kind of behavior, nature, and together they are called skandha. And they are divided into 5 in exoteric sense, which are rupa, the material properties or attributes, vedana or sensations, sangya or sanya, abstract ideas, sankara, which we call sanskara, tendencies, both physical and mental, and vijnana, which includes mental powers and amplification of the sanskara, meaning mental, physical, and oral habits and conditionings. And we add to them 2 more, he says, the nature and names of which you will learn hereafter. But for now, he says it is enough for you to let you know that they are connected with the productive of sakhyaditti, that is sense of separateness. We can say asmita or delusion of individuality, and of attavada, atmavad, that is the doctrine of self, both of which, in case of 5th principle, he is saying the soul, means this is not, he is talking about the atma, I am, the monad. No, that individuality is not, that is what talked about. What here is talking about is the I am related to the 5th principle, the mind that gives us a sense of I-ness, asmita, avidya, which lead to the maya of heresy and belief in the efficacy of vain rites and ceremonies in prayers and intercession, which again, that I was discussing before, that we think that rites and ceremonies and certain kind of prayers or somebody else will come and change our destiny or something. Believe in efficacy of vain rites, that nothing, that is also a maya. So together, all these, they form the skandhas, and with our daily emotions, daily thoughts, daily actions, we keep modifying them. It's like having a pen drive with us, and we keep adding files to it, deleting some, adding some, deleting some, adding some. And then after a while, when the person dies, there is a new collection of files, having the old ones and some new ones. Then continuing from there. So now returning to the question of identity between old man and new ego, he says, reminding again that he says the science says we are changing continuously. He's saying we also say that a person of any given age does not remain the same, even what he was a few years earlier, and we say 7 years, and we are prepared to maintain and prove it that after 7 years all the cells basically of the body are renewed. So basically we are not the same person. Buddhistically speaking, the person's skandhas have changed at the physical, as desire level, mental level, all the atoms and microparticles. At the same time, they are ever and ceaselessly at work in preparing the abstract mold, that is for the future being, continuously whatever we are doing. Same thing, he is giving an example that if a person of 40 should enjoy or suffer for the actions of the person at 20, so why is it not equally logical that a person who is having a new birth suffer or get rewarded what the Jivatma did in the past life? But still he kind of makes a remark about the Western law, which punishes, suppose, the innocent son of a guilty father, or we can, and another examples, that suppose the person does wrong, he gets some punishment in the form of jail or some capital punishment, then not only that person, his whole family actually gets punished, because what wrong that son has done as per the physical law. The law of karma we are not yet talking about, but the law, the human man-made law is giving punishment to the father, but the whole family is suffering. What, I mean, is it not unjust and cruel than anything done by karma? So instead of punishing the innocent together with the culprit, what does karma do? Karma avenges and rewards the former, which neither of your three Western potentates, the law, the society, and the church, have above mentioned ever thought of doing. So next he goes, but perhaps our physiological remark, because the objectors may say that it's only the body that changes, the molecules that changes in the body from a person of 20 years to a person of 40 years, but it has nothing to do with mental evolution. And skandhas represent not only the material part, but also mental and moral qualities. So then he asks a question, Master asks a question, that either a sensation or idea or a tendency of mind or a mental power can absolutely be called non-molecular phenomena, because everything, whether that is happening, everything is matter basically. Finer matter, much finer matter, but everything is basically finer matter, and everything actually comes down and reflects in some form or the other in our physical body. So can even a sensation or most abstract of thoughts, which is something, come out of nothing or be nothing, which is not possible. So now he says the causes producing the new being and determining the nature of karma is Trishna, the desire for sentient existence, and the Upadana means the reason, means which is the realization or fulfillment of this Trishna. So this whole cycle goes on, and both of these, the medium helps to awaken in the person who has just died by suicide or an accident victim. So that's what was the whole purpose of explaining how this skandhas change. So the person has died, he gets attracted by a sensitive or a medium, and then again he starts modifying them only for worse, because there is no good thing that because depending on the medium and the sensitive, it's only going to go in a lower direction. And that's how at the end of that time, the natural time of the death, by then they have taken so much of negative karma, that after their time ends, they basically either most of the time they get lose the touch with their higher Atma Buddhi monad, or they have to spend a lot of time in the earth's attraction and their further journey is delayed. So again, he is giving an example, for instance, for an ego who is supposed to die at 80 or 90, but due to some accident or suicide dies at 20. So remaining 60 or 70 years, he will be like an elementary. And those who have supposed spent a good life, who are pure, so basically died by accident, they will be sleeping. But the others, they will go through this these consequences that we just discussed. And in this process, they will develop new set of skandhas, tendencies, and passions, and then these are the beings that comes in every seance, and they multiply the causes of misery, causes that will make the unfortunate ego fail in his spiritual rebirth, that is in the Devachan, and be born into a worse existence than ever. And now he says that now you may understand, to ABCnet, he is saying that why we oppose so strongly spiritualism and mediumship. There is no other reason to, like, just for the sake of opposing, or it is, this is the reason that by doing this sort of things, actually they are preventing a lot of people or creating obstacles, and not only obstacles, they are actually bringing them down and leading themselves also and these people who have just died to their annihilation, and preventing them from having their onward journey. That is the reason that they oppose so strongly the spiritualism that is calling the souls and in having interaction with them. And then he discusses some another matter with about some two people, which I'm not going to discuss, which is not related to this doctrine of Devachan or post-mortem states. And let me see, the next part is, yeah. And then he says, anyhow, it may show her, basically, to Mrs. Gordon, who is very, very enthusiastic about spiritualistic phenomena. He says, now it may show her, if you tell all this to her, that it is not against true spiritualism that we set ourselves, but only against indiscriminate mediumship and physical manifestations. And indiscriminate mediumship, that sitting and calling for the spirits to come, communicating with them without knowing, without even having the willpower, and letting them control the medium, and physical manifestations of the spirits in some using the body, materializations and transpositions especially. So that's what he is saying. Could the spiritualist be made aware to understand the difference between individuality and personality, between individual and personal immortality and some other truths, they would be more easily, they can be convinced that the occultist may be fully convinced of monad's immortality, and yet deny that of soul, that is the personality, which dies at every cycle of birth and death. And if they know that, these spiritualists will be less hospitable to these spirits, means they will basically stop this process and basically save themselves from creating much more bad karma. And once that we are discussing individuality and personality, it is curious. He is again, another name for individuality and personality in Buddhist terminology is of Pachekayana and Amatayana. which is Chino-Tibetan technical names for many personal entities blended in one individuality. The Pachekyana, or in Sanskrit it is called Pratyekyana, means the personal vehicle or the personal ego, combination of 5 lower principles: physical body, etheric double, prana, astral body, and the lower mental. And the Amatayana is translated as immortal vehicle, or the individuality or spiritual soul, or immortal monad, combination of 5th, 6th, and 7th principle, as we studied. In this, we are using two dual aspect of mind. So higher mental, buddhi, and atmic. So then there is a comment from a comment that from AP Sinet, that he thinks that the difficulty in understanding all of this is basically not to understand completely the divisions of the 7 principles. And Master says, yes, quite right. And Sinet says that if they are explained much more in detail about the 4th and 5th principles, how it works, because physical is physical, and physical, etheric, and prana. 4th and 5th means kama and manas. If they can be explained in much more in detail, and their branches and how it works, everything, it will be much more clear for them. Master says yes, but still he says, I doubt whether even if I give the explanation that you are asking for, your difficulty will be removed, and maybe or maybe not, you will be able to penetrate the secret of the psychic phenomena. But still, he says, I will try to do that if I get time. But he didn't get time, and later only on, he explains that. And the letter ends, but then there is a postscript, which is some of the points, a few points which are relevant to us in this case. That he says that when he has given so many information, they have been given so many information, he says, yourself and Mr. Hume have received now more information about this philosophy, Aryan philosophy, than was ever given out to non-initiates within my knowledge. And why? Because of all our semi-chelas, you two are the most likely to utilize this for the general good, the facts given to you. You must regard them received in trust for the benefit of the whole society, to be turned over and employed and re-employed in many ways and in all ways that are good. So basically, it is kind of a hint to us also that when we are studying all these things, we should not only remain as a passive reader or student, we should actively, whenever there is an opportunity, share it in whichever platform that we get an opportunity to share it. And he's actually very clearly asking Mr. Sinet that you would give me pleasure if you do not let any month to pass without writing a fragment, long or short, for the magazine, and then issuing it as a pamphlet, and you may sign it as a lay chela of KH, or in any way you choose. So basically he's telling that share this knowledge with as many as possible in any form, in any way that is you can. So then that will give him pleasure, means that will make him think that at least the mission that they have started, we are trying to take it to as many people. And then there was one query regarding the Pioneer, the newspaper that Mr. Sinet was working in. But he said, I will not yet answer, but do not take any rash decision. We are at the end of the cycle, and you are connected with the TS. So this is also kind of a hint that sometimes things get really messy and challenging and difficult, and sometimes we may think of taking some rash decisions, but we can also take them as some testing times and try to have a bigger picture that maybe it is happening due to some other reasons. The factors are beyond our control, and this too shall pass. And then maybe there was something, the letters that Mahatma was sending were not in good conditions, the writing was not so good, etc. So what he has explained, that because he was traveling so much and he could just write anywhere. My writing has been done in odd places here and there with such materials as I could pick up. That is okay. But what next statement he says is very important. But for the rule that forbids our using one minimum of power until every ordinary means has been tried and failed. I might, of course, have given you a lovely precipitation as regards chirography and composition. So even there, I mean, we are very quick to ask for miracles or some paranormal activities or something like that. But even they are bounded by, masters are bounded by this rule that until all the ordinary means we have tried and not worked, then only they can use their higher powers. So I think, okay, in the last, there is one more hint that we can pick up. He's explaining many things of the things that happened at that time. Olcott is on his way to Lanka, and Damodar packed up to Pune for a month, his foolish austerities and hard work having broken down his physical constitution. I will have to look after him and perhaps to take him away if it comes to the worst. So this is also another hint that sometimes in our extreme enthusiasm, we may even hurt our physical body, which is actually the vehicle of our higher principles. So then instead of becoming an assist, support and help, we actually become a liability on this path. So we should respect our limitations, and we should also know our strength and weaknesses both, that how much we can stretch ourselves and beyond which we should not, because even C.W. Leadbeater has written that sometimes few minutes of extra work can cause so much damage in our body, in the nerves, that can take years to recover from. And then in the end, he makes a very humorous comment, which gives us an idea that we think when at that stage, the Mahatmas, adepts, they have everything at the blink of an eye, they can do anything. But what he says, it gives us a completely different picture. He says, at times I feel a passing regret that Chauhans should not evolve the happy idea of allowing us also a sumptuary allowance in the shape of a little spare time. Means, oh, for the final rest, for that nirvana, where to be one with life, yet to live not. The soul of thing is sweet, the heart of beings is celestial rest, one does long for eternal rest. That is, it is a happy idea only, that sumptuary allowance means very expensive kind of relaxation and nice, which is of course nirvana, eternal rest. But for that, there is a lot of work to do before, until we reach that state. So, and with that, that letter comes to an end, and I request Vibhaji.
Thank you very much, Shikharji, for concluding this extremely long letter, which contains some of the most important philosophical teachings regarding this Devachan and all the states or post-mortem states. I now request Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi, and after that we can have some discussion on this letter.
Namaste. Thank you, sister. Thank you, brother. आज हम लेटर नंबर 68 का उर्वरित पार्ट ले रहे हैं। इस पार्ट में मास्टर बताते हैं आत्महत्याएं और दुर्घटना में मारे गए लोगों के बारे में बताते हैं। वे कहते हैं कि दोनों ही प्रकार संवाद साध सकते हैं और दोनों को ऐसे संप्रेषण के लिए भारी भुगतान करना पड़ता है। और अब मुझे फिर से समझाना होगा कि इसके क्या मायने हैं। यह ऐसा वर्ग है जिसे फ्रेंच अध्यात्मवादी पीड़ित आत्माएं कहते हैं। वे नियम के अपवाद में हैं क्योंकि उन्हें पृथ्वी के आकर्षण और उसके वातावरण कामलोक के भीतर रहना होगा, उस आखिरी क्षण तक जो उनके स्वाभाविक जीवन काल का अंतिम क्षण होता। दूसरे शब्दों में कहे तो जीवन विकास की उस विशेष लहर को अपने किनारे तक बहना चाहिए, लेकिन उनकी स्मृति को पुनर्जीवित करना और उन्हें एक कृत्रिम जीवन जीने का मौका देकर उनकी पीड़ा को तीव्र करना, यह पाप और क्रूरता है। माध्यमों और संवेदनशीलों के जरिए उन्हें लुभाकर उनके कर्म का भार अधिक हो जाता है, क्योंकि ऐसे प्रत्येक आनंद के लिए उन्हें भारी कीमत चुकानी होगी। आत्महत्या करने वाले जो मूर्खतापूर्ण ढंग से जीवन से भागना चाह रहे थे, वे स्वयं को अभी भी जीवित पाते हैं। उस जीवन की पर्याप्त पीड़ा उनके लिए अभी बाकी है। उस मात्रा में उनकी सजा है। अपने अविवेकी कृत्य से अपने सातवें और छठे तत्व को खो देने के बाद, हालांकि यह हमेशा के लिए नहीं है, क्योंकि वे दोनों को पुनः प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। अपनी सजा को स्वीकार करने और अपने छुटकारे के अवसरों को लेने के बजाय उन्हें अक्सर गलत तरीकों से जीवन पर पछतावा करने के लिए और उसे फिर से हासिल करने के लिए प्रलोभित किया जाता है। तीव्र इच्छाओं के क्षेत्र कामलोक में वे अपनी सांसारिक लालसाओं को, तृष्णा को पूरा कर सकते हैं, लेकिन एक जीवित माध्यम के द्वारा, और ऐसा करने से उनके स्वाभाविक जीवन काल की समाप्ति पर आमतौर पर वे हमेशा के लिए अपना मोनाड खो देते हैं। दुर्घटना के शिकार लोगों की हालत इससे अधिक बदतर है। जब तक कि वे इतने अच्छे और शुद्ध न हो कि उन्हें तुरंत आकाशिक समाधि के भीतर खींच लिया जाए, यानी शांत निद्रा में, सुहाने सपनों भरी नींद में, जिस दौरान उन्हें दुर्घटना की कोई स्मृति न हो, बल्कि वे अपने सुपरिचित लोगों और स्थानों में रहते और टहलते हो, जब तक कि उनका स्वाभाविक जीवन काल समाप्त न हो, तब वे स्वयं को देवाचन में पाते हैं। यदि वे दुराचारी और विषयासक्त है, तब ऐसे दुखी छाया रूप इधर उधर भटकते हैं, जब तक कि उनके मृत्यु का समय नहीं आता। जिन रोजमर्रा की सांसारिक लालसाओं से वह बंधा था, वे अभी कट चुके हैं। उन्हें लुभाने के लिए, बदले में उन्हें संतुष्ट करने के लिए माध्यम उन्हें अवसर प्रदान करते हैं। वे न केवल अपने शिकार को बर्बाद करते हैं, बल्कि अपने अमानुषी आवेगों के प्रवाह से बने यह मानसिक पिशाच आखिरकार अपने स्वाभाविक जीवन काल के निर्धारित अंत समय में पृथ्वी की कक्षा के बाहर उन क्षेत्रों में ले जाया जाता है जहां युगों तक बेहद कष्ट भोगते हैं और संपूर्ण विनाश के साथ उनका अंत होता है। लेकिन यदि दुर्घटना या हिंसा का शिकार न तो बहुत अच्छा है और न ही बहुत बुरा, यानी वह एक सामान्य व्यक्ति है, तब उसके साथ इस तरह से हो सकता है। एक मीडियम जो उसे आकर्षित करेगा, वह उसके लिए निहायत ही अवांछनीय चीज, स्कंधों के नए मिश्रण और नए और बुरे कर्म का निर्माण करेगा। चूंकि आप इस विषय में अधिक इतनी रुचि रखते हैं, इसलिए आप कर्म और निर्वाण, इन दो सिद्धांतों का जितनी गहराई से हो सके उतना गहरा अध्ययन करें। जब तक आप इनसे अच्छी तरह से परिचित नहीं होंगे, जो अभिधर्म के तत्व मीमांसा की दोहरी कुंजी है, तब तक आप बाकी को समझने में हताश होंगे। विभिन्न प्रयोगों में हमारे पास कई प्रकार के कर्म और निर्वाण है, जैसे ब्रह्मांड के, विश्व के, देवों के, बुद्धों के, बोधिसत्वों के, मनुष्य और प्राणियों के लिए दूसरे वाले के 7 किंगडम सहित। कर्म और निर्वाण बौद्ध तत्वमीमांसा के 7 महान रहस्यों में से केवल 2 है और 7 में से केवल 4 को प्राचीन संस्कृति के श्रेष्ठ अभ्यासक जानते हैं, और वह भी पूर्ण रूप से नहीं। यदि आप किसी बौद्ध प्रीस्ट से पूछे कि कर्म क्या है, तब वह आपको बताएगा कि कर्म वह है जिसे एक क्रिश्चियन प्रोविडेंस कह सकता है और एक मुसलमान किस्मत, भाग्य या नियति कह सकता है। कि यह वह मुख्य सिद्धांत है जो यह सिखाता है कि जैसे ही कोई सचेतन या संवेदनशील जीव, चाहे वह मनुष्य, देवता या पशु हो, जब वह मरता है तब एक नया जीव उत्पन्न होता है और वह अपने पूर्व कर्मों के अनुसार उसी या दूसरे ग्रह पर अगले जन्म में फिर से प्रकट होता है। या दूसरे शब्दों में कहे तो कर्म मार्गदर्शक शक्ति है और इंद्रिय गम्य जीवन जीने की चाह या इच्छा यानी तृष्णा शक्ति या ऊर्जा है, जो मनुष्य या प्राणी की क्रिया का परिणाम है, जो पुराने स्कंधों से नए स्कंध समूह का निर्माण करते हैं, जिससे नया जीव निर्माण होता है और जन्म के स्वरूप को नियंत्रित करता है। इसे और स्पष्ट रूप से कहे तो नए जीव को पुराने सराहनीय कार्यों और दुष्कर्मों के लिए पुरस्कृत या दंडित किया जाता है। कर्म लेखा जोखा की किताब को दर्शाता है, जिसमें मनुष्य के अच्छे, बुरे या सामान्य कृत्यों को स्वयं वह, या यूं कहे तो उसके कार्यों द्वारा सावधानी से अपने जमा खाते में वह दर्ज करता है। चूंकि कर्ता और पीड़ित अलग अलग जीव है, कर्ता बचता है और एक निरपराध निर्दोष पीड़ित होता है। इस अन्याय पर बौद्ध धर्म के विरोधियों ने बहुत जोर दिया है। तथ्य यह है कि जहां एक तरफ उन्हें ऐसा माना जा सकता है, वहीं दूसरी ओर वे समान है। पुराना पहले वाला जीव नए जीव का एकमात्र जनक या एक ही बार में पिता और माता है, और सत्य यह है कि किसी देहधारी पिता से अधिक यह पहले वाला है, जो वास्तव में बाद वाले का निर्माता और रचयिता है। और एक बार जब आप स्कंधों के बारे में महारत हासिल करेंगे, तब आपको मेरी बात स्पष्ट होगी। यह स्कंधों का समूह है जो शारीरिक और मानसिक व्यक्तित्व का निर्माण करता है, जिसे हम मनुष्य कहते हैं। यह समूह 5 स्कंधों से बनता है, अर्थात रूप यानी भौतिक गुण या विशेषताएं, वेदना यानी संवेदना, संज्ञा यानी अमूर्त विचार, संखारा यानी शारीरिक और मानसिक दोनों प्रवृत्तियां, और विनन्न यानी मानसिक शक्तियां, जो चौथे का विस्तारण है, यानी मानसिक, शारीरिक और नैतिक प्रवृत्तियां। हम इसमें 2 और जोड़ते हैं, जिसके स्वरूप और नाम के बारे में आप बाद में जानेंगे। अभी के लिए आपको इतना ही बताना पर्याप्त है कि यह सक्कायदिति से संबंधित है और उसी के फलस्वरूप है, जो व्यक्तित्व के अर्थ की गलतफहमी, भ्रांति या भ्रम है, और आत्मवाद से संबंधित है। दोनों भी भ्रांति की माया और व्यर्थ के संस्कार विधि और अनुष्ठानों की ओर, प्रार्थना और याचना की ओर ले जाता है। अब पुराने और नए जीवात्मा की पहचान की ओर फिर से आते हैं। मैं आपको फिर से याद दिलाता हूँ कि आपके विज्ञान ने भी हमारे भगवान बुद्ध द्वारा स्पष्ट रूप से सिखाए गए बहुत पुराने तथ्यों को स्वीकारा है, अर्थात कि किसी आयु का एक व्यक्ति, चाहे वह भावनात्मक रूप से एक जैसा है, फिर भी शारीरिक रूप से वही नहीं होता है जैसे कि वह कुछ सालों पहले था। हम 7 साल कहते हैं और उसी पर कायम है और साबित करने के लिए तैयार है। बौद्धों के दृष्टिकोण से कहे तो उसके स्कंध बदल गए हैं। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं, साथ ही वे आने वाले नए जीव के निजी अमूर्त सांचे को तैयार करने में निरंतर कार्य कर रहे हैं। फिर यदि 40 साल के व्यक्ति को एक 20 साल के व्यक्ति के कृत्यों के लिए आनंदी या पीड़ित होना चाहिए, यदि ऐसा है तो यह उसी तरह से होगा जैसे कि नया जन्म लेने वाला जीव जो वास्तव में पुराने वाले जीव के समान है, चूंकि वह उसी के परिणाम स्वरूप है और उसी की निर्मित है। उससे उस जन्म लेने वाली आत्मा या देहात्मा के परिणामों को महसूस करना चाहिए। लेकिन शायद हमारे शरीर शास्त्र विषय टिप्पणी के लिए आक्षेपकर्ता जवाब में कह सकते हैं कि यह केवल शरीर है जो बदलता है, केवल मॉलिक्यूलर ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन होता है जिसका मानसिक विकास से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, और यह कि स्कंध न केवल द्रव्य को बल्कि मानसिक और नैतिक गुणों को दर्शाता है। मैं पूछता हूँ, क्या कहीं कोई संवेदना, अमूर्त विचार, मन की प्रवृत्ति या कोई मानसिक शक्ति है जिसे कोई पूर्णतः नॉन मॉलिक्यूलर फिनोमिना कह सकता है? क्या कोई संवेदना या सबसे अमूर्त विचार जो कुछ है वह शून्यता से उत्पन्न होता है, या वह कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता है? अब जैसे कि पहले बताया गया है, नए जीव का निर्माण करने वाले और कर्म के स्वरूप को निर्धारित करने वाले कारक तृष्णा है, संवेदनशील अस्तित्व की इच्छा और उपादान है, यानी उस तृष्णा या उस इच्छा आसक्ति की प्राप्ति या पूर्णता है। इन दोनों को एक मीडियम प्रेतात्मा में, चाहे वह आत्महत्या से हो या दुर्घटना का शिकार हो, उनमें चरम सीमा तक जागरूक करने और विकसित करने में मदद करता है। नियम यह है कि जिस व्यक्ति की प्राकृतिक मृत्यु होती है वह कुछ घंटों से लेकर कई वर्षों तक पृथ्वी के आकर्षण के भीतर यानी कामलोक में रहेगा, लेकिन जिनकी आत्महत्या और बेरहमी से मृत्यु होती है उनके मामले में यह अपवाद है। इसीलिए उदाहरण के तौर पर ऐसे जीवात्मा जिनका पूर्व निर्दिष्ट जीवन काल 80 या 90 साल का था, लेकिन जिसने मान लीजिए 20 साल की आयु में या तो स्वयं को मार डाला या किसी दुर्घटना में मारा गया, उसे कामलोक में एक प्रेतात्मा या अर्थवॉकर के रूप में कुछ वर्षों के लिए नहीं बल्कि इस मामले में 60 या 70 साल गुजारने होंगे, क्योंकि उसके लिए दुर्भाग्यवश वह एक शेल भी नहीं। इनकी तुलना में वे देह रहित सत्ताएं त्रिवार सुखी है जो अंतरिक्ष की गोद में गहरी नींद सो जाते हैं और सपने में रहते हैं, और धिक्कार है उन्हें जिनकी तृष्णा उन्हें माध्यमों की ओर आकर्षित करेगी, और धिक्कार है उन्हें जो उन्हें इतने सहज सुलभ उपादान से लुभाते हैं। उन्हें पाने और जीवन प्राप्ति की चाह को पूरा करने वास्तव में इसी कारण से स्कंधों के नए समूहों को विकसित करने पहले वाले शरीर से भी कहीं अधिक बदतर प्रवृत्ति और जुनून के साथ एक नया शरीर विकसित करने के लिए एक मीडियम उन्हें मदद करता है। और अब आप समझ सकते हैं कि हम अध्यात्मवाद और माध्यमवाद का इतना कड़ा विरोध क्यों करते हैं। और अब जब आपको बहुत कुछ बता दिया गया है और बड़ी मात्रा में समझाया गया है, तब आप इस पत्र को हमारे अदम्य मित्र मिसेस गॉर्डन को भी पढ़कर बता सकते हैं। दिए गए कारणों से उसके अध्यात्मवादी धुन पर पानी फेर सकते हैं। हालांकि ऐसा होने के मेरे अपने कारण हैं, ऐसा न होने के मेरे अपने कारण हैं, फिर भी यह पत्र उसे संकेत कर सकता है कि हम सच्चे अध्यात्मवाद के खिलाफ नहीं उतरे हैं, बल्कि अविचारपूर्ण माध्यमवाद और स्थूल रूप में अवतरण, स्थूल रूप धारण और विशेषतः अर्ध चेतनावस्था में कब्जा करना इनके खिलाफ है। आगे मास्टर पचिकयाना और अमितयाना के बारे में बताते हैं। पचिकयाना यानी शब्दशः व्यक्तिगत वाहन या देहात्मा, जो निचले 5 तत्वों का संयोग है। अमितयाना जिसे संस्कृत में अमृत कहते हैं, इसका अनुवाद यानी अविनाशी वाहन या इंडिविजुअलिटी, जीवात्मा या स्पिरिचुअल सोल या अमर्त्य मोनाड, जो 5वें, 6ठे और 7वें तत्व का संयोग है। आगे सीनेट का क्वेश्चन है, मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि कार्यों की प्रगति को समझने में आने वाली हमारी कठिनाइयां 7 तत्वों के विभाजन को हमारी अज्ञानता से है। हमें बताया गया है कि प्रत्येक के अपने 7 एलिमेंट्स है। क्या हमें विशेषतः चौथे और 5वें तत्व के सप्त संख्यक संरचना के बारे में और अधिक बताया जा सकता है? निस्संदेह इनकी विभाज्यता में जीवन के दौरान भविष्य और कई साइकिक फिनोमिना का रहस्य छिपा है। मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, बिल्कुल सही। मुझे संदेह है कि कहीं वांछित स्पष्टीकरण के साथ कठिनाइयां दूर हो जाएगी और आप साइकिक फिनोमिना के रहस्य को समझने में सक्षम हो सकते हैं। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं कि हमारे अर्धचेलों में से आप दोनों दिए गए तथ्यों का भलाई के लिए उपयोग करने की आपको और मिस्टर ह्यूम को अब अर्हत एसोटेरिक फिलोसॉफी के बारे में इतनी अधिक जानकारी मिली है, जो मेरी जानकारी के अनुसार किसी भी अदीक्षित को पहले कभी दी गई हो। हमारे अर्धचेलों में से आप दोनों को दिए गए तथ्यों का भलाई के लिए आप उपयोग करने की सबसे अधिक संभावना है। संपूर्ण सोसाइटी के भले के लिए इसे आपको विश्वास के साथ सौंपा गया है। ऐसा मानिए, जिस तरह से अच्छा हो सके उस तरह से आप इसे इस्तेमाल करें, उपयोग में लाएं। मैं अभी आपके पायोनियर वृत्तपत्र के संबंध में आपके प्रश्न का उत्तर नहीं दूंगा, लेकिन जल्दबाजी में कोई फैसला न करें। आप साइकिल के अंत में हैं और आप टीएस से जुड़े हैं। हमारे नियम एक भी न्यूनतम शक्ति का उपयोग करने से वर्जित करते हैं। मैंने आपको निश्चित ही चीरोग्राफी और रचना संबंधी सुंदर सा प्रेसिपिटेशन दिया होता। एक हफ्ते में आगे मास्टर कहते हैं कि कभी कभी मुझे इस बात का अफसोस होता है कि हमें थोड़ा खाली वक्त के रूप में अतिरिक्त छूट देने के सुखद विचार को चौहानों ने सोचा नहीं है। ओह, उस निर्वाण के लिए, वह अंतिम वीरान, जहां जीवन के साथ एक रूप होने के लिए, फिर भी जीने के लिए नहीं। The soul of things is sweet, the heart of being is celestial rest. One does long for eternal rest. हर कोई चिर शांति, चिर विश्रांति की चाह रखता है। Thank you. Namaste.
Meenakshi ji, thank you so much for this wonderful translation of this long letter. And now we have our forum open for discussion. So if anybody would like to discuss some point, any clarifications or questions, we can go in for that. From this letter, it is quite clear that man is not just his simple physical body, but there are so many layers, his constitution. And after this seeming lifespan gets over, the physical lifespan, what are the states that it may enter, how it can be disturbed, and how it can accrue new effects. So that is the thing to contemplate upon. Anybody would like to add something here? Shikharji, any closing remarks from you?
Okay, that's, I think, what you have summarized. And also in that light, we can see that how we are carrying a lot of opinions about post-mortem situations and the many rituals or ceremonies that are being done in that name. And the fear of death, as you mentioned earlier also, it is helpful in getting over that. And also how suicides, I mean, if somebody is in some sort of negative state of mind, we should, definitely try to help in person by encouraging or sending positive thoughts to that person, because, or explaining that that is not a solution. And why it is always good to keep doing good things, just, good action, punya, because even if, as it is said, accidents happen. So if the person is good and pure heart, he will immediately, I mean, he can avoid all these things that are mentioned here. So yeah, basically this. And as you said about the principles, various principles that constitute a human being. And it is not also that idea once a person dies, he becomes like, omnipresent, omniscience, that people think that Atma ko Shanti mile. But I mean, Atma is always Shant, peace, but there is the states of reaching that stage. So how it happens. So I think it was a very enlightening, inspiring letter in that sense.
Yes, Shikharji, thank you so much. One more point which I want to add is that generally, see, accident victims, we can't do much about it. They are accidents, as the name itself suggests, accidents. But yes, these suicide victims, that is where this theosophic education can make a difference. Especially when I see that around the time when the results of board exams are announced, young children of class 10, class 12, they think they just throw their life away because they have not achieved the result that their parents expected or that they expected. So this kind of education will really open the eyes not only of those children but mainly of their parents, so that they can prevent from such things from happening to such young children. So that's a really very sad thing to happen.
Bilkul, ji, right.
Any other point anybody would like to make? Anil Kumar Barua ji, would you like to say something? Sir, your mic is mute. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to talk about the suicide thing, part of the thing. This is really, that will be very, if we educate parents and children, and nowadays it is so much on increase actually, and it seems there is no way out. So from Theosophy side, we must do something. Thank you so much. It's a very valuable deliberation. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
तो शिखर जी से प्रश्न है कि मान लीजिए सुसाइड कर लेते हैं, वो बात तो समझ में आ गई है। और जैसे मान लीजिए कोई गलती नहीं है किसी की, किसी की दूसरे की वजह से उसका एक्सीडेंट हो जाता है, तो वो उसकी उम्र मान लीजिए 80 साल है, 20 साल में होता है, तो क्या 60 साल तक उसको हॉस्पिटल में रहना पड़ेगा? उसकी गलती नहीं है।
हाँ, नो, एक्सीडेंट इज, दैट्स व्हाई वो एक्सीडेंट का नाम ही एक्सीडेंट है, क्योंकि एक्सीडेंट में जैसे डेथ होती है, लाइक somebody dies in train accident और प्लेन एक्सीडेंट, तो उसमें व्यक्ति की गलती नहीं होती है, वो कुछ भी, मान लीजिए पायलट की गलती है या कोई नेचुरल या वेदर ऐसा हो गया जिसकी वजह से एक्सीडेंट हो गया, या बस पहाड़ी में गिर गई, तो वो अपनी गलती से तो कोई वो नहीं करता है। तो एक्सीडेंट का मतलब ही है कि वो किसी दूसरे की एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स की वजह से हुआ है सिचुएशन। तो वो अगर एज मान लीजिए 80 है और वो 20 में होता है, तो दैट रिमेनिंग ईयर्स द पर्सन हैज टू लिव अगेन। वो जो तीनों ऑप्शंस महात्मा ने बताए हैं, मास्टर ने, कि अगर पर्सन बहुत ही अच्छा नेचर का, गुड एंड प्योर हार्ट, so immediately the person will go in आकाशिक समाधि, it's like a blissful state, वो अनकॉन्शियस में स्लीप में चला जाएगा। और अगर पर्सन बहुत ज्यादा डिजायरस और फुल ऑफ ऑल द कोर्स वाइब्रेशंस, तो इट विल इमीडिएटली ट्राई टू वो लोगों के बॉडी पे पुर से उनको इन्फ्लुएंस करने की कोशिश करेगा। और अगर एवरेज पर्सन है तो वो फिर किसी मीडियम या वो अगर अट्रैक्ट होगा तो अपने को और वर्स ही बनाएगा उसके माध्यम से काम करके। बट जस्ट नाउ आई हैड अ थॉट कि एक और केस होता है जब आप अपनी जान देते हैं, when you end your life, not to run away from the consequence of your actions, but as a sacrifice. That is not a suicide, mind you. that does not count as a suicide. Suicide हम लोग यहाँ जो बात कर रहे हैं वो situation है when the person is trying to end his or her life to avoid the consequences. जो भी स्ट्रेस में है, डिप्रेशन में किसी वजह से व्यक्ति चला गया है या कोई XYZ रीजन है, that what we are talking about. But उन केसेस में जैसे किसी को बचाने के लिए, मान लीजिए आप सड़क पे खड़े हैं, आपने देखा किसी को और आप कार आ रही है, कुछ आ रही है और उसको बचाने के लिए, वो तो मान लीजिए आपने बचा लिया लेकिन आपको मालूम था कि you will lose yourself. या बच्चे को बचाने के लिए माँ का सेक्रीफाइस या sacrifice for the country, या basically sacrifice not for oneself if you are doing, then that does not count here, and it is mentioned in some other place कि that is it. or Socrates taking poison, or कि Giordano Bruno को जला दिया गया. I mean, he could have easily escaped death, but he was standing for his principles. That's all those situations are not I mean, they are not they will not fall under the part of section of suicides or intentional killing oneself.
Right. I see there are many people.
एक प्रश्न और उठ गया मेरा कि मान लीजिए उसको जो गया दूसरे की वजह से, उसका एक्सीडेंट में मारा गया, उसकी बड़ी अपेक्षाएं थी कि मैं ये करूंगा और वो करूंगा, बहुत मतलब बहुत वो कर या क्या कहना चाहिए, तमन्नाएं थी बहुत सारी।
हाँ,
उस व्यक्ति को जी
हाँ
तो वो पूरी कर नहीं पाया,
हाँ
तो क्या उसका क्या होगा?
हाँ, वही तो अभी बताया सर, क्योंकि उसकी इच्छाएं तो अभी बहुत जागृत हैं और पूरी एनर्जी है उसमें। अब शरीर छूट गया तो फिर वो क्या करेगा, वो उनको पूरी करने की कोशिश करेगा। वो पूरी कैसे कर सकता है, एस्ट्रल बॉडी में है, प्लेन में है, तो फिजिकल बॉडी तो नहीं है। तो वो किसी ऐसे व्यक्ति को के तरफ अट्रैक्ट होगा जो मीडियम है या जो थोड़ा सेंसिटिव व्यक्ति है इन सब साइकिक चीजों के प्रति, तो उनके माध्यम से वो कुछ
समझ में आ गया, समझ में आ गया सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
जी 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 जी, ओके सर।
शिखर जी, क्या मैं बात कर सकती हूँ? शीतल।
हाँ शीतल जी, नमस्कार। नमस्कार जी, जी बोलिए।
नमस्कार जी, मुझे एक्चुअली दो प्रश्न थे कि पिछली बार आपने एक तो जेस्टेशन पीरियड बताया, जेस्टेशन है ना,
जी जी जी,
इसके बारे में भी पूछना था। और दूसरा प्रश्न मेरा ये था कि जैसे सुसाइड है तो कभी कभी हम देखते हैं कि मठाधिपति है, बड़े बड़े उच्च विभूषित लोग जो है कि जो दूसरों को सिखाते हैं वो खुद ये कर्म कर बैठते हैं सुसाइड का। तो क्या ये डेस्टिन रहता है या दे आर लाइक दैट?
नो, नहीं, डेस्टिनी, देखिए सुसाइड कैन नेवर बी अ डेस्टिनी। द डेस्टिनी, और डेस्टिनी मीन्स हमारा जो प्रारब्ध कर्म है, suicide there can be a lot of suffering, there can be a lot of stress, a lot of difficulties, challenges, but whether to escape them or run away from them, I mean, or to face them, challenges तो रहेंगे, but वो तो हमारे कर्म के हिसाब, they are coming as per our karma. But to end the life is basically the soul is not yet ready to face the consequences which it has to face. one day or another, some day, today or some other day. So that's why suicide is placed as a very big sin. उसको पाप इसीलिए कहा गया है कि you are basically prolonging your journey and creating a lot much more. Actually, you're going in the negative direction. So once this that I think I have read it in something that suicide. I think in P. Pavari's book he has written that, but it's also understandable that suicide cannot be a part of divine plan or in destiny. Suffering, yes.
Can you say that those people who must have having this knowledge after suicidal what happens, okay, but even then they are doing so, means are they immature or they have done it in a very weak moment?
Yes, because see, the intellectual understanding of a doctrine and living that doctrine are two different things. We all study law of karma and how we are continuously populating our world with our thoughts, desires, and actions all the time. But since we are we are still so okay, I'm at least talking about myself, that we are still so accustomed to this way of living that we are not aware of we are not in that state all the time that we are aware. And the moment that awareness goes, we give in to some of our old habits, like irritation or getting upset or fulfilling some ambition or something. So it means we have read about law of karma and we should not do this thing, but still the impulse of our past habits, it sometimes, and that is what you are, if you are calling a weak moment, yes, there will be testing moments. Basically, I would rather call it a testing moment, that the situation will come. And if through our, so basically it means we have to make our study deeper and much more deeper through study, meditation, and try to be in that stage that when the karma comes, then we are ready to face it. And this is even actually facing our own karma. And HPB has written in Golden Stairs, courageous endurance of personal injustice. I mean, this is what I have done wrong and it's coming to me. Imagine I have done nothing wrong and still I am blamed for something that I have to courageously endure. So, but all these things only if we go deeper and deeper in them and, make them. That's why it is called a living wisdom. Theosophy has to become a living wisdom in our life to fully understand it.
Yes, thank you. And my first question was that gestation period, a little confusion. Means rather, can you elaborate? Actually, something you have said that after going in astral plane or loka, again and going in devachan, again there is a gestation period. So I'm not getting it.
Actually, it is a bit, there is a bit of, that's why not everything is very clear cut that is given. If you read Annie Besant, if you read C.W. Leadbeater, if you read HPB, if you read Mahatma letters, there are some, some differences, even some of the things, there are differences. For the same thing, if you read Annie Besant, she has written about gestation, different thing. But here what is said is when we reached in, there are 3 periods, right? When the ego delivered of its mortal coil enters into Kamaloka. So the physical body, the person has left the physical body and enters into Kamaloka in any case. So now it remains in the Kama Loka. But in the Kama Loka itself, once this exhaustion of the desires and everything that goes on, which it says the sub-period 1 may last from few minutes to number of years, which depends on the nature of the kind of life we have lived. We will spend more or less in that time. Now then, before going to Devachan, again, since we are only studying it, and that's why even maybe AP Senate has asked in this letter more clarification about the fourth and fifth principle, the planes and subdivisions. We have been taught that there is astral plane and then mental plane. And even astral plane has 7 subdivisions, mental plane has subdivisions. And we don't know how many, subdivisions there really are. Even these subdivisions have some divisions, or there is a state of consciousness in astral plane only, in which the jiva goes after this, after this struggle between the upper duality of Atma Buddhi, higher manas, and the lower duality, Kama and lower manas. So if the higher ones, which is most of the cases of humanity, then that jiva goes to the gestation period, that is preparing to enter, preparing to be reborn in the lower mental plane or Rupa Loka. And it is like a child in the womb. It is getting prepared to be born because it has done the journey in the astral plane, exhausting all its, the negative vibrations or whatever the material it was there in the astral body. And if the lower duality wins, then instead of going to gestation, that connection between that monad, Atma Buddhi, is broken, and the Kama, the desire element, is so strong that it even extracts all the individuality from the Buddhi also, and it becomes an elementary in itself. And then instead of going to the gestation, that being, that entity remains in astral plane and again becomes an influencer or tries to take birth in some of the bodies. These people are called soulless people, and that's what HPB has written, that they are the lowest of the lowest kind, but over a period of time, since they have lost the connection from their monad, their energy, they try to keep themselves alive by taking energy from others, but over a period of time, they disintegrate, and later they go to a planet of death or Avicii or the 8th sphere, as it is called. So yes, there is some certain, not so in black and white how this happens and what exactly is the state there, but I think for now we have to satisfy ourselves with this, but maybe later on when we do for more study and we think over it, we get something more out of it. I don't know if I was able to give a satisfactory answer.
Yes, that was a very deep explanation, and it's true that all these things have been explained by different people in somewhat different manner. So yes, it really inspires everyone to study it, contemplate on it, and spend a lot of time going over it. So I think this was a very long question answer session, but it was worth it because this letter had such deep philosophical teachings. And now I think we should call this session to a close. It's we are half an hour above time. And if anybody would like to ask any more questions, they can send their queries to Shikharji or to this forum, to anybody in this forum, and their queries can be answered or discussion can be taken up personally. So with this, thank you, Shikharji, once again, and thank you to all the participants.
Thank you, Vibhaji. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and let us end the session with the closing prayer. Om Asato ma sadgamaya tamso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Sarvesham swastirabhavatu Sarvesham shantirabhavatu Sarvesham purnam bhavatu Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu Sarve bhavantu sukhinah Sarve santu niramaya Sarve bhadrani pashyantu Ma kaschit dukha bhag bhaved. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.